Happy Friday, church family, and hello especially to all of you Living Hope kids. I hope that you have had a great week, and I want to welcome you back to part 2 of our Resurrection Eggs God Nugget for Kids. If you remember these from last time, there are 12 eggs that all have something inside them that teaches us about the story of Jesus and his life as he was getting ready to die on the cross. And today is part 2, where we're going to look at the next 4 eggs. Are you ready to see what's inside them? This first egg has a piece of leather. And this piece of leather is to remind us about something that's very awful in the story of Jesus. I'm going to read to you just one little verse from John 19. It mentions somebody who was the governor of Judea at that time. His name was Pontius Pilate, and this is what it says in John 19. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. Have you ever heard the word flogged before? Another common word that you might hear is that Jesus was scourged. Have you ever heard the word scourged before? Quite simply, it means that Jesus was beaten. You see, the death of Jesus on the cross had a whole series of very painful and brutal events that led up to the cross. The cross itself was terrible, but the hours before the cross were also quite bad. And the people who eventually crucified Jesus treated him terribly as they led him to the cross. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute, but I want to look at a couple more of the eggs. This egg has a crown of thorns inside of it, and this is to remind us of what the men did before they nailed Jesus to the cross. The Bible says they took thorny branches and made them into a circle and put them on Jesus's head so that they could mock him for being the king of the Jews. And the crown they made had spikes that stabbed into his head. Like I said, it was pretty awful the way they treated Jesus. And then there's this egg. And this egg has nails. And as you can see, these nails are in the shape of a cross. But if you look carefully, you can see that there are 3 nails. There's this one here, and then there are 2 that go from side to side. And this is a reminder to us that Jesus' hands and his feet were nailed to the cross. It's pretty awful, isn't it? That Jesus, who had never done anything wrong, was whipped, was beaten, had a crown of thorns put onto his head, and then his hands and his feet were nailed to the cross. Do you understand why that happened? There's a lot to learn as we grow in our Christian faith, but quite simply, it's this: sin must be punished. It simply must be. And Jesus, who never sinned, took all of the punishment for me, for Pastor Todd, for your mom and dad, for your grandpa and grandma, your brothers, your sisters. Jesus took that punishment for us so that we wouldn't have to. Jesus stepped in the way of that necessary punishment. And now we can be forgiven through Jesus. Let me read this for you. You might find this very interesting because back in the Old Testament, it was already a prophecy that this very thing was going to happen. Listen to this. I gave my back to those who strike, and my cheeks to those who pulled out the beard. I did not hide my face from disgrace and spitting. That's Isaiah chapter 50, verse 6. All along, the prophecy was that Jesus would suffer for us. And then listen to this. In chapter 53, it says that Jesus bore our griefs and he carried our sorrows. He was stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And upon him was the punishment that brought us peace. Isn't that absolutely magnificent? By Jesus' wounds, we are healed. That's Isaiah 53, 4 and 5. Well, for today, we have one more egg, and this will be our last one for today. You recognize that, don't you? The Bible says that as Jesus was there on the cross dying, that the soldiers decided they would divide up his beautiful one-piece tunic. It was valuable enough that the soldiers didn't want to rip it. And so they said, instead of ripping it, let's play a game of chance, and whoever wins gets to take the tunic home. And so the dice reminds us that the soldiers gambled for Jesus's clothes. Next week is going to be Good Friday. That is the Friday before Easter Sunday. And on that day, we will cover these last 4 eggs. We'll see what's inside them, and we'll see what it teaches us about the Easter story. Until then, I hope you have a terrific day. Hope to see you at church. God bless you. Bye.